This is Fam Electric Ghost doing it live on the air with Andrew Poles for the first time. Welcome to the Fam Electric Ghost podcast. How you doing today?
I'm doing well, man. So good to be on here. I'm honored. Thank you.
Well, thank you for being on the show today. Before we get to the heart of the story, we have to get some business done. If people take their QR code, you see a QR code on the screen. If you take your phone and scan that, that's for Podmatch. Podmatch is how we get guests on the show. And if you're a podcaster or you're somebody who wants to be a guest on a podcast, scan that QR code. You can find out about Podmatch, and it's a way to link people together like a Tinder for podcast guest and host. So check that out. And that's our little sponsor today to tell you about that. But before we get to your heart of your story, I ask every guest on the show a couple of questions. What motivates you, and why do you do what you do?
So what motivates me is a pull that I feel. And I think, I'll tell you a story that I think best represents this. I was on an airplane last year flying back to Austin, where I live, from Palo Alto. And there was a founder just sitting next to me on the plane by chance, if you believe in chance.
Mm-hmm.
And I coach founders for a living. And so he and I got to talking. And he asked me this question. And he said, okay, you coach people. If you couldn't coach people, if you couldn't coach anybody, what would you want to do with your life? And I sat there, I swear to you, for a full minute and thought, I was like, okay, let me just imagine, what would it be like? I can't coach. I was like, not even my friends. Like, I can't give anyone any coaching anytime, but anything's like, yeah, you can't do any coaching. And I was like, I don't have an answer for your question, man. I can't imagine life any other way. I think I coach because I came here to coach. I came here to heal, and coaching is my medicine. And so I do it because that's just who I am. That's why I do it. It just gives me the most joy in the world.
I think that's interesting. It's wanting to know somebody's motivation, what they're passionate about. It's kind of like this, like everybody's got their own secret sauce that's their individual drive. And that's kind of why I like to have this open format to, have people give me their vision or give me like, what is your purpose? What is your story? And that's, when you talk to artists, they'll tell you, like, I was 5 years old, I picked up the piano and they never stopped because it just spoke to them. Right. And I think that like things like that, what you're talking about is the same type of thing that speaks to an artist, speaks to a painter, speaks to a pianist, speaks to a filmmaker. That's like when you figure it out, then you're in that.
Yeah, man. And you've done 1,300 episodes, and the way that you came on this thing before we went live, you were just happy to be here. You've done this 1,300 times. You're just like, yeah, man, let's get all set up and let's go. Look at you. You're smiling. When someone's doing their thing, you can see their joy. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing. I can see that in you.
Yeah, it's like I wear a lot of hats. You can see behind me. I got all my synthesizers and my keyboard. I'm a musician. I'm a software guy. I work with a startup. That's better to have a job like that than if you're a musician, you don't want to be a starving artist. I can buy my Rolands and buy my Moogs and my all my equipment. But it's just what you find is, like, if you're passionate about something, you don't do it because you're like, I knew some guys when I was like 17, and I was getting my first like bar, bands, and these guys like, because they didn't hit, they didn't get on MTV, they gave it up, right? Other people, like, I know guys that they had a guitar when they were at 21 and it's in the basement. They never picked it up again.
Yeah.
But other guys, like, they're still playing. I'm 58. They just do it. You do it because you love it. If you love it, then it's kind of law of attraction, and then things will, your tribe will find you.
Yes, I find that as well. Yeah, I find that as well. Yeah, so, recently, to your point, speaking about artists, my wife asked me if I would watch the Eras Tour documentary with her about Taylor Swift. Okay, for anyone who hasn't watched this, and I like Taylor Swift's music, but I'm not like a Swiftie. I'm not a Swiftie, I guess you call them. So I didn't know a lot about Taylor Swift when I started watching this documentary. And so, like, I'm watching with my wife, and they're showing clips of her as a kid, just like as you were saying. They're showing clips of Taylor Swift as maybe like an 18-month-old playing on the piano, as a 5-year-old playing on the piano, as an 8-year-old starting to perform, playing guitar. it's just like she came into this body, into this life to give a message to people, to share her story, to connect people together through her music. You can see it. It's like, it's just who she is. So it's a beautiful thing, man. I appreciate what you're doing.
Yeah, I think what's interesting is like, I'm working with, a startup. Um,
Yeah.
and you get
Yeah.
these guys in the software business, like in the entrepreneurial kind of Silicon Valley mindset. You get these guys that are just idea guys,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
they have these ideas and they're super passionate, and then they'll run it, and then they'll actually build a business, and then they'll go and start another one, and they'll sometimes it's not the same thing. It's not like just a carbon
Right.
copy of what they did
Right.
before. It's just they
Right.
have a passion about bringing ideas into the world. And when you have people who
100%.
have that kind of passion, it's like, they fail upward.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah. You know who I think is a great example of this is Picasso. So like between business and art, so
Yeah,
like
yeah.
I coach most of the people I coach are startup founders. Not all, some of them run established businesses. But and like you said, some of them are like serial founders or serial entrepreneurs because they love to build things. They just love to build things. And you can see the difference between someone who is pushing for success and someone who's being pulled by something that's fulfilling. And they
Mhm.
both work hard. They both work really hard. But I think the pitfall of that style that has you push for success around something, because like you said, your friends who didn't make it on TV, so they quit, is that you tell yourself this lie, or we do, that when we get to X, so when we get on MTV, when I get the Grammy, when I have my exit for my $1 billion company, my unicorn, whatever, when I have that kind of money or recognition or whatever it is, then I will be whatever. Then I will be happy. I'll be safe. I'll be fulfilled. I'll be whatever. And it never, ever, ever goes that way. It doesn't work that way. So the people who are driven in life by purely by push, although they often do become successful, many times those are the people who have the biggest challenge with their happiness, because if you've achieved everything that you dreamed and you're still not happy, now what?
Yeah, that's the
And
big
so the
problem.
people who are pulled, right, who are pulled like you clearly are, and I know that I am as well, when you're pulled by something, whatever level of success you achieve or don't, the activity itself is fulfilling. And I'll share this thing with you. So every day I go for a walk in the morning and I do a video, and I call it Morning Walks with Andrew. Okay. And my goal with these walks, I do hope that they reach people and that they make a difference, but it's
Mhm.
a practice I have for myself. So what I do is I go outside, I face the sun, get my camera all set up and everything, my mic, and then I close my eyes and I center myself and I say a particular mantra or prayer that helps me just let go of my agenda to like do a good video, to get to the next thing, to, have a lot of likes, blah, blah, blah. I surrender my agenda and I just open myself up to the message that wants to come through me today into the world. I'm like, please let me be a clear channel for whatever that is. And then I just ask, what's the topic? And something will pop into my mind. And then I don't let myself think about it. I just click record and I start walking and talking. And I'll do several takes to try to get something that is concise. So if someone did listen to it, it would be worth their time. And I'm not just rambling, like I kind of am right now. But the reason why I do it is because I am obsessed with this problem that I've created for myself, which is how do I every single day, how do I become more connected, more deeply trusting of that place from which these messages come, and
Mhm.
become a clear channel of that? How do I get more of that message out in the world? How can I be more useful to that? And I don't know if I'm ever going to make a single dollar in my whole life from doing that. And I don't really care. I am
Mhm.
obsessed with being used in that way. And it gives me so much joy to do that. And I practice that on my coaching calls and I practice that with my wife. And so this thing about being pulled, this thing that you're talking about, your artistry, the thing that gives you joy, it is like a bottomless well
Yeah.
of
Like,
drive and fulfillment, right?
well, the
Yeah.
Victorians, they called it like the muse, and,
Yes.
a lot of
Yeah.
people today talk about, like, they get a download from the universe, or
Yes. Yes.
like, it's just this artist thing is the way I think what happens, just my opinion, is artists are in tune with their subconscious, but they're
Mm,
also very in tune with what happens outside themselves. And it's
mm.
a dual capability of like they can pull from their subconscious mind and they can also pull from the outside world and they synthesize it. But then they have
Yeah,
like their
beautiful.
20,000 hours or whatever they're good at, like whether you're an
Yes,
actor,
yes, yes,
you're a
yes,
pianist, you're a painter,
100%.
and then they can kind of riff on it. And when they riff on it, it seems like, wow, like how could that be riffing? It's because they put a lot of work into being a master, but
Yes,
they allow themselves to get that download or get the muse and have it happen,
yes,
and they don't put the wall up. And if you
yes,
don't
yes,
put that wall up,
yes.
then you don't run out of the well doesn't run dry.
Yeah, beautiful, man. Yeah, beautiful.
So I'm very much into like just you know, stream of consciousness, kind of a
Mm,
jazz fusion mindset when it comes to
yeah,
creativity. And I
yeah,
find that even though I mean I know music theory, I was trained. I could play woodwinds, I can play basses and pianos and synthesizers, but over time you just like what I just like you just pull from that download,
yeah,
and then you figure out to structure it like through. They're like, oh, this is the hook, or this is the intro. This is
yeah, 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 yeah,
you end up having to be able to discern. But so it's like I don't know what I can discern from. I just put it down. I just put everything on tape and everything into the drive and then listen to it and then figure out what goes together and just kind of collage it together.
You know, this thing
But
that you're saying right now, I really like it. So I just want to ride on your coattails for a second if I can,
yeah.
because one of the things I did in the last couple of years is I wrote my first book, which is in editing right now, I'm a professional editor. And when I was writing this book, I was motivated or I was inspired to write the book by friends because I went through this incredible transformational journey trying to accomplish something that I didn't think I could do. It was a 104-mile long mountain biking race in the Colorado Rockies at 10,000 feet of elevation. Okay, so I'd never done anything like it, and I thought I couldn't do it, and I pulled it off, and it changed me as a human being. And my friends were like, "You need to write about this. You need to write about it." So I write about it. And I didn't want to write about it because it just seemed to me like this is just my very personal like story, my own little tiny little world no one's going to care about.
Yeah.
What writing the book helped me realize is that every human being's life is a story. There is something incredibly rich and beautiful about the story of every human being's life, and maybe it wouldn't be a commercial success or whatever in terms of turning into a movie or a book. But if you really listened, if you could walk the earth in their experience 100%, you would see there's just an incredible story unfolding. And so this thing you're talking about the muse and how people who are artists mix their 10,000 hours of a learned mastery with the messages that they download. I believe that every human being has ideas, messages, art, whatever it is, that is searching to come into the world through them.
Hmm.
It's looking for someone who will say yes to it. Do
To
you know what I
channel
mean?
it. Yeah. You got to
Yeah,
channel.
and like this is why I think people sometimes have the same ideas around the same time,
Oh
like the
yeah.
way Isaac
There's a
Newton and
synergy. There's a
Leibniz.
synergy that happens.
Yeah, like they invented the calculus
Synchronicity.
at the same time. And then I don't know if you've ever heard the incredible story that Elizabeth Gilbert tells, the author of Eat, Pray, Love, about
Hmm.
the story that came and found her, started working on, and then she abandoned it for a little while and worked on other stories. And when she tried to come back to it, she had a really hard time tapping into the energy of it. But in that off period, she went into a talk of Ann Patchett, another author who she's friends with and who she loves. And in the kind of the break in the talk, she and Ann Patchett exchanged a brief kiss hello with each other. And then they went their separate ways. And so as Elizabeth Gilbert was struggling, trying to get the story revivified, she talked to Ann Patchett about what she was working on. They're like, well, let's talk about what we're working on. And they discovered in the conversation, without ever having talked about it before, they were both writing the exact same story. A
That
woman
happens.
from Minneapolis who goes down to the Amazon. It's just like the details are unbelievable, right? And so it's like, how can that be possible? So I believe, like you, that ideas are looking for a way into the world, and that any human being could actually be the vehicle through which they come. And then when they come through you, they get to intermix with your beautiful story and your 10,000 hours and your
Yeah.
particular
Then it
lens.
gets like
And that's the beauty of every, go
yeah,
ahead.
I think that's the thing is like, if you think about the blues, like, there's
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
pentatonic scale, and it's like, you
Yeah.
got Buddy Guy playing it, you got, um, any of the great masters, Leadbelly, but, like, Hendrix could take a Leadbelly song, but the way
Yeah.
he does it is not the way that Robert Johnson did it, and so
Yeah.
it's the same song, Stevie
Yeah.
Ray Vaughan can do Voodoo Child, but Hendrix wrote it. The
Right.
2 versions, maybe they sound the same, but they don't, right?
Yes.
It's like, it's even when you're playing the same note, they don't sound the same, and
Right.
so
Or Prince's As My Guitar Gently Weeps solo, right? That was just
yeah, yeah, that was brilliant.
unbelievable. Right?
Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
your approach, and then that sometimes people come up with parallel, ideas, like in a synchronicity, where they get this, like, the same thing. We find it in, like, in sciences, like in engineering. Like, you
Yeah.
have 2
Yeah.
engineering teams, and they both come up with the same idea, and they're like, "Who gets to the
Yeah.
patent first?" But it's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
they get to
Yeah.
the same thing, and they weren't even, doing any industrial espionage.
Yeah.
They just come to
Yeah.
the same idea, right? It just
Yeah.
happens.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I think it's really important, like, for people to, they not get, overwhelmed or burned out, because
Mm.
that's kinda what you help with people, is like, is the
Yeah.
burnout is the big problem, because I think there's a lot of people, even in Silicon Valley, kinda IT, these guys are like, "Oh, you gotta do the 140, 160 hours." They're telling all these young people to coming out of just coming out, is like, "Yeah, you gotta do that." It's like, if you don't, you get diminishing returns if you don't give yourself breaks.
Right.
If you
That's
don't, like,
right.
walk away from things. And
That's
so, I mean,
right.
even programmers, you can't sit for 8 hours coding.
Yeah.
You'll make a lot of mistakes. It's
Mhm.
better if you do 2 hours and then walk away and then come back. Now,
Yeah.
maybe your boss was like, "Well, where were you?" It's like, "Well, if you want, if I just sat there 8 hours, it's gonna be full of errors."
Right.
It's just better to sometimes walk away, and, sometimes we're so into the nitty-gritty of, like, "Oh, we gotta work the 8 hours straight," and it's not always that way. It's not always, you know, sequential.
That's
Like, it
right.
doesn't always work that way, but people want it to work that way.
Yeah, yeah. Well, sometimes you drop into that space where you're really cranking, you're in flow, and then you will get to the end of that period of time when you're in that state, and you don't want to leave that state, and you want to keep going, and you want to get more done because it's incredible when you're in a flow state, and then people will keep pushing, and that actually, as you pointed out, has a diminishing return. It's better to step away and come back. But I think there's a bigger issue. I mean, there's great science now on like how do you optimize your productivity, and do you do pomodoros with 25/5, or do you do 90-minute, 30 minutes, like what there's all kinds of great science out there
Kinda
and people
whatever
can learn
serves to
all that
what you're
stuff.
working on. It's kinda hard
I
because
think
everything you work on is, like, different things serve, like, in some situations, sitting there for 6 hours might be what that needs.
right,
In other situations,
right.
being there 6 hours might destroy it, right?
That's
So
right.
it's
That's right.
so
That's
it's
right.
kinda like it's not always the same thing for everything.
So I think that productivity piece, there's a science to it and an art to it, and knowing one's own self, and every person is a little bit different. I also think what's important is going kind of full circle to one of the first topics we talked about, is that some people experience burnout because of what they're being driven by or what they're tapping into as a fuel source. And in my experience of coaching startup founders, it is very, very readily available as a fuel source to be driven by fear. Startup founders
Mhm.
who are equity backed, as you know, you raise money to get this product off the ground. You have to discover if the product has any legs or not. And that runway of cash you have is always getting shorter and shorter. It's always diminishing. So that's very frightening. And then you have to get to a certain milestone to be able to raise more money. And it just never ends. And so there can be a lot of fear that drives people. When people are driven by fear, they can be very effective. They can be very productive, but it comes at a very high cost. It's a very dirty fuel. So it burns hot. People produce a lot with it, but there's a huge cost. And I think one of the challenges that we're facing right now in the startup world in particular is that there is a lot of fear that drives how people work. And it is not a healthy way to produce. And if you look at capital investment, I know we're getting into a bit of a niche subject right now. So
Yeah,
for
yeah.
the people who
That's true.
aren't in the startup ecosystem, this may be a little bit less relevant ecosystem, but the dynamic, I promise you, no matter what field you're in, this thing that we're talking about right now about fear as a fuel source, it is relevant to you regardless of what you do for a living.
Mm-hmm.
In the startup ecosystem, you have investors, and those investors are only investing for one of mostly two reasons or three. One of them, a return on their investment. They want this money to make money. That's what they're counting on it for, like retirement. The second one is that they believe in the idea somehow from the perspective of purpose or mission. They really think it's worthwhile doing, so that they want to see it successful, and maybe they know you personally and they want to support you personally. Those are usually the things that are there. But most of the time, the people who are putting in big checks, they want to see a return on their investment. And so as the person who's taken their money, it's very easy to feel a tremendous amount of pressure and responsibility to make good on that expectation, because that was the deal. Like, hey, if you lend me this money, I'm going to make money for you on this money. So there can be all kinds of things like that show up in people's dynamics. For example, in relationships, we get into these crazy, crazy dynamics in our relationships based on fear. Like, I literally have had founders tell me, well, I'm with this person because I think it's the best I'm ever going to get. Like, I don't love this about it, and this doesn't really work, but there's all these other great things. And I just don't think I'll ever get anything better than this, even though it doesn't really work for them. So that's like a fear-based mindset.
Yeah.
People are the same way about jobs. I just think this is the best I'm going to get. And so when your life is permeated with, and your decisions are driven by fear, you wind up getting this very high cost that you pay. And like you were talking about burnout, that's one of them, but also in satisfaction and fulfillment, a sense of personal power. So one of the things I do in my coaching is I'm committed to reconnecting fuel and helping them not be driven by fear, so that their lives can be built on what really does fulfill them. And it's challenging. It's challenging to move out of that fear-based fuel source, because it does work, but also when you are afraid of something, it just seems so real. And I read this great, I'll finish with this. Since you said you like stream of conscious and rambling, I'm going to just ramble one last piece and then let you chime in here with whatever you want to say. But I read this great quote, okay? And I reposted it on my Instagram feed, actually, because it said, both faith and fear ask you to believe in something that you can't see.
Mm-hmm.
So choose, right? So people think fear is less faith-based than faith, but if you think about it, it's not. When you're afraid of something, you're almost always afraid of something that's not happening now. It's not even there now. You're afraid of some future outcome that might happen. It's not here now. You can't see it. So fear is a very destructive form of faith, you could say. And yeah, I see it eat up the well-being of a lot of business leaders, for sure.
Yeah, it's like it's like the flip side of faith is just like all this anxiety. Like the fear is like, oh, I'm
Oh
not
my
gonna
God,
hit
so much,
you, you
so
you're not
much.
you're not gonna hit the goal. It's like the perfection trap that that an artist gets into, where they do like 100 takes, and then really take number 4 is really the good one, but they keep on thinking they're gonna hit
Yeah.
mythical with 101, 102, 103. You're gonna hit some mythical thing that's actually better than
Yeah.
take 4, and you're actually destroying your idea, you know? It's like you actually have to get people around you
Yeah.
to actually say, "You know what? That's not perfect, but it's actually what the song needs." And that's a hard thing to deal with.
Beautiful. Yeah, exactly.
And I think that's
Yeah.
where the problem. I think a lot of people, like, if you're gonna be in a startup world or you're an entrepreneur, failure, I talk about failing upward. Like if you're in sciences, like we have experimental variations, we do a lot of like agile, everything's iterative. So we're designing something, right? And we do all these iteration 34 ends up being something we didn't even it's not in the plan. But iteration 34 is actually better than the plan. But do you have the confidence to bring that to somebody and say, hey, this actually is better than what we're doing. We should do something else with this. A lot of people,
Yeah.
like, they fear raising their hand to actually do that
Yes.
because
Yeah.
they want to stick to the plan. It's like sometimes you
Right.
can't like the universe gives you something, you actually need to go with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, man. 100%. So let me ask you a question, because you've done 1,300 interviews. You've talked with so many people from so many different domains. What do you think empowers people when fear is a driver for them and in a way that's not productive, right? Like you're saying, like they have an idea or they see something, but they're afraid to raise their hand. They're afraid to speak up. What would you say to people to support them with doubling down on what they see, on what they believe, on what they think makes a difference and not being driven by fear?
Well, I think
How do
that
you deal with that?
why I try to tell everybody, as a producer, even a creative person, being somebody who's done it, is even when I'm working with teams and new developers, is like your secret sauce is your own intuition, right? Your own
Mhm.
skill set, your own point of view. If you go and just clone the Joneses, if you just
Mhm.
copy, everybody goes
Uh-huh.
around today because of the algorithms, they just copy the cat video because the cat video got 1,000,000 views. Right?
Right, right.
And then they use
Yeah.
the same song. It goes, they use the suggested song.
Right. Yeah.
What if you don't
100%.
use the suggested? What if you use your own song? And they're like, "Whoa, I don't know what's that." That's the fear. That's the thing I always tell people is like that is what you should double down on. Is what is
Mhm.
and nobody else can be you, and nobody else is going to
Yeah.
have your point of view. So if you don't speak it out, if you don't get it from inside to outside, that's a failure of your own making. Like, you need to double down on understanding, building yourself up, and even if you make a mistake, even if somebody hears and said, "I don't know about that," that's how you move forward. You can't keep it inside. That's why I tell people, like, you have to push through it.
Yeah. I noticed that we had a little bit of a delay there for a second, so I was just seeing if there's anything I could do on my end to speed things up. But yeah, I also think that this gets into the whole question of purpose, because if you are unwittingly, you're always going to be living your life from purpose. People say, "Oh, I just don't feel like I have any purpose." And maybe there are some people experiencing depression or depressive like symptoms who actually don't have
Mhm.
anything pulling at them. But for people who don't experience something like that, there's always a purpose. It's just not necessarily one that you want to be guiding your life. Like they may have a purpose of being safe. They may have a purpose of being safe. I don't want to, raise my hand. I don't want to risk losing my job. I don't want to go look for another company. I just want to be safe. Okay. So that's a purpose. That is a purpose. There's nothing right about that purpose. There's nothing wrong about that purpose. That purpose will give you the life that it will give you. It will give you the thinking about what to do or not to do that it will give you. It will give you the choices it gives you. It will give you the experience it gives you. And at the end of the day, the quality of our life is quite frankly the sum of the quality of each of the moments that we live. That's the quality of our life. So if you're operating in your job in such a way that your moment after moment experience is one of boredom, or your moment to moment experience is one of doubting yourself and telling yourself, my thoughts don't matter or don't matter here, you get to have that life. That is literally your life, is
Yeah.
that experience. So, one of the things I find is useful for people in this conversation is to help them get clear about what purpose would give them the life, which, when they look back on it from their rocking chair in their retirement, when they're in the last year of their life, they would say, I am really, really happy with how I live this life. I am fulfilled with how I live this life. And people sometimes have to move through a lot of fear to get there. But once you get there, it makes so many decisions and choices so much clearer, so much easier, even though there may be fear. It's so much clearer what there is to do.
Yeah, I think what happens is people get comfortable with their bad loop. Like, they get comfortable with their
Yeah.
toxic relationship, toxic boss, toxic workplace, and they say, "Well, I
Yeah.
gotta pay the
Yeah.
mortgage." And it's scarier to say, "Well,
Yep.
how am I gonna pay the mortgage if I get out of here? This is what I know," but it's actually not very good, but it's like you get stuck in that bad loop, and to get out of it, it's kind of like a
Yep.
Bowie made a statement one time, and they're asking him why, how come he was such a chameleon. He said, I don't feel moving forward artistically unless I'm treading water a little bit." So
Oh, that's a great quote, man. I've never heard that before. I love
yeah,
that.
he basically had, I kind of paraphrased him, but he did talk about like treading water and not drowning. But you could see it. He would shapeshift. He would like, you go from Ziggy Stardust to the Thin White Duke or the Aladdin Sane, and he would lose some fans because some fans like they
Yeah.
want just they want is Ziggy, or they want
Yeah.
is the Thin White
Yeah.
Duke, or all they want is
Yeah.
Aladdin Sane. But
Yeah. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
have to be willing to say, "Well, I have to move forward." It's like Miles Davis when he went from bebop to fusion. All the
Yeah.
fusion, canon said, "Oh, that's crazy." But, so he lost those guys. Those guys, like, that's not jazz. They even to this day, in there are people that don't dig his fusion stuff. There's other
Right.
people that just swear by it. It's like, well, you're gonna lose. It's like a law of attraction. You got some tribes gonna come to you, and other ones are gonna go away from you. But that
Yeah.
doesn't mean that you
Yeah.
need to stop on the direction you're going.
Yeah, and I love that you brought up the law of attraction, because on the other side of that way of thinking, or that formula, that I think is important is, and let's see if we can frame this in such a way that people who don't necessarily believe in that can still get some value from it. Because you could have people anywhere on the spectrum of, I'm a deeply religious or spiritual person, and I believe there's a power bigger than myself. People are like, I'm a complete atheist. I think it's all materialistic, and whatever. You
Mhm.
get people all on that spectrum. I would love for this to be valuable to anyone, anywhere on that spectrum. I don't want anyone to feel like this isn't their conversation. But I think so. The other side of that equation is, what is each human being actually truly capable of? And I think one of the challenges people face with leading a fulfilling life is that they are completely misled, misguided, and wrong about what they are or are not capable of. And there are very few people who are delusional thinking that they're capable of things that they're not. Most of us are delusional thinking we're not capable of what we actually are. And then our life gets shaped by those delusions.
Yeah.
I remember when I was about, let's see, well, how old was I? 72, 82, 92. I was about 38, 37 years old. And I had a company from 1997 to 2003, my very first company, which I started for the sole reason that I was going to become a single dad, and I needed to be able to take my daughter to work to be able to see her in her first couple of years of life. And there was no job I could see in my city that was going to allow me to do that. So since I wanted to be around my daughter as much as I could, I started a company. When I closed that company down, I went to work for another company that was like a competitor of mine at the time. And within a couple of years of starting there, I got promoted to be the general manager of that company. So all of a sudden now I'm managing a team of about 50, 60 people. I don't know, maybe $5-6 million revenue. For me at that time, that was a lot of revenue to be managing. I was still early in my career. And I thought, oh my God, this is amazing. Well, the owner sold half the business to a friend. And when the friend came in, everything changed. And the friend brought along their spouse, and their spouse created a lot of trouble in the company. And I could just tell, no, I tried and tried for years, okay, to get this all to work. But the truth was, it wasn't really working. But no matter what, even though my friends would say, you've got to leave this job, you got to leave this job, I couldn't do it. One day I was on a phone call with a friend of mine. He's like, why won't you leave this job? And I said, you don't understand. I was like, this is all I know. This is all I know. This is all I've done since I left graduate school and started my company. This is all I've done. It's all I know. And for what I know how to do, this is the most money I'm going to make in this city. The only way I'm going to put my daughter through college, the only way I'm going to put food on the table. This is all I got. And he's like, no, you don't understand. You don't understand. People will hire you not for what you know how to do. People will hire you for who you are.
Yes.
For who you are and for what you are capable of. And I said, I don't think so. He said, you're wrong. He said, let me tell you what you should do. Quit your job today, right now, and go put yourself out on the market that you're looking for something new, and just watch. And I was like, are you out of your mind? You want to quit my job? But anyway, just to make a long story short, I didn't quit my job right away because my wife, who is my muse, she was like, don't do that. Put in your
like a good idea.
find a job and put in your notice. Do it right. She was like, you put in your notice, all these things. So I said yes to that. And I started talking to everyone in my network saying, I'm leaving this company. I want to leave this whole field. I want to do something else. I don't know what it's going to be, but do you know anyone? Do you know anyone? Do you know anyone? So I had a list of 50 people to call, and I'm calling.
Mm-hmm.
The day after I started the 2 days after I decided to do this, Monday, I decided to do this. Wednesday morning, I do a presentation at my company. And my client calls me after. He goes, that was amazing, that presentation. He goes, I need your help with something. I say, what do you need? And he goes, I'm looking for someone to help me grow my business. I just split with my business partner. And I'm like, great. What are you looking for? He goes, I'm looking for someone exactly like you.
Opportunity.
He said, I have looked high and low. And he said, I cannot find anybody like you. Do you know anyone like you who would want to help me grow my business? And I was like, did somebody tell you that I'm leaving this company? He said, you're leaving there? And I said, yes, I'm leaving there. He said, you need to come talk to me right away. So I sit down with him at lunch, okay, the next day. So this is Thursday. On Monday, I tell my wife, I'm going to have a job by Friday and then I'm quitting. She goes, okay. So Thursday, I go out to lunch with him, and he owns a construction company. He builds high-end custom homes. I, at the time, was running a company that did high-end cabinets. So he was a client. I didn't know how to build a house. I knew nothing about building houses, right? I knew a lot about selling. I knew a lot about people. I had already become a coach. I knew a lot about coaching. He's like, I want you to come work for me. I want you to help me grow my business. I don't know how to grow my business. I don't know how to sell. And I was just like, but he's like, you're going to need to build houses to justify your salary. And I said, Ford, I don't know how to build houses. I don't know anything about that. And he goes, I don't care what you know how to do. He literally said, it really touches me. He said, I'm not hiring you because of what you know how to do. If I hire you, it's going to be because of who you are. I can't find anyone who is the way with people you are. And I can teach a monkey how to build a house. And so that really shocked me to hear. Like, those words came out of his mouth 2 days after my friend said, this is how the world is. And I said, you're wrong, because I was too afraid for him to be right and to take the risk. So I sat with it for a day, and I wound up taking the job. And I will tell you, it was really scary, because I showed up on my first day of work at a job site, and there are all these people waiting for me to tell them what to do. And I had to tell them, like I had to tell the framer, I don't know the difference between like a rafter and a joist. I don't know what that is. So I kind of need you to teach me what you do, and I'll help you figure it out. You know? And people were like, what? And it was like a tremendous amount of humility on my part to have to admit, I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
But I'm willing to learn. Okay. And what happened was, when I started with that company, he was doing about $1 million in revenue. We got it to $4 million in revenue in pretty much no time flat. And I learned how to build houses in the meantime to justify my salary. And some of the houses I built wound up in Architectural Digest, was on the AIA Tour of Homes, we're in Dwell magazine. He taught me all that stuff. He taught me how to do all that stuff. But I taught him how to sell to people with integrity. I taught him how to sell to people and have things be a win-win. I taught him how to market his business. And I was happiest of all the times I've worked for somebody else in my life. Okay. And I've had 3 companies, so I've done both. That was the happiest I've ever been. I'll tell you, man, the happiest I've ever been was in that company where I got hired to do something I didn't know how to do, where I left a job that I was comfortable but miserable in. I made more money working for him. I had more freedom. I had more joy. So if there's one message I could leave with people about this topic we're on now, this what you call the law of attraction, is that I would like everyone to consider, if you're unhappy in some area of your life, you really underestimate who you are and what you're really capable of. And if fear of loss is what's driving your decisions, then you haven't yet discovered the truth about who you really are and how much life is on your side. And I just think that's such a big lesson. When you learn that, it's a game changer. And sometimes you have to learn it every 3 years or whatever, you got to level up and level up. But
yeah, I think that's really important, because a lot of times people, like, they're on these job sites, they're on the LinkedIn and the Indeed, and they're going on there, and these algorithms, with their AI, they're always looking for these perfect fits.
Right. Yeah.
And what I found is, like, I have a Rolodex of, I've been working 30 years. I got a Rolodex of all these people.
Yeah.
And I started hearing from all these people, like, "The LinkedIn's not working, the Indeed's not working, and I'm getting, like, stuck in here." I said, "You need to actually use your Rolodex and call people, have
Yeah.
a lunch
Yeah.
with somebody." And when
Yeah.
I got my next job, the job I'm in now, is I had been going through all that, and I was finding people say, "Oh, you're not the perfect fit." And it was like, it wasn't working. Then I called a guy that I had worked with at a startup. The startup had kinda not worked, and then I called him, and they actually was starting again, and I didn't have all the experience they needed,
Yeah.
but they knew me. Right?
Yes.
And then I got in, and it's really like, and
Yes.
if you were trying to match on the LinkedIn, I wouldn't have got it. Like, if you let the bot do it, you let the agent do it, you won't do it. So
Great
this is what I'm
story.
trying to tell people in the tech world. It's like, you should not rely on these agents and all these bots and all
Yeah.
this stuff. You still
Yeah.
need to have human interaction, because you're gonna miss a lot of good candidates if
Yeah.
you just weed them out through all that tech.
100%. Yeah.
And I
100%.
worry that people are relying on that stuff a little too much, like, especially right now.
Yeah. I feel that.
So, because I think that what you're talking about is like you were calling people, and you
Yeah.
were having
The
you were
guy who
having
called me, I
discussion.
wasn't on my list, right? But the
Yeah.
fact was that I was taking steps. It's sort of like it's like you get to the edge of the cliff and you can see the other side and you want to be on the other side, but there's no bridge. It feels like you're going to take the first step off the edge of the cliff, trusting that the bridge is going to show up when your
Gonna show
foot
up
lands where
magically.
it needs to be, right? And that's exactly what happened. I started calling people, and then someone not on my list called me.
Yeah.
Said, I'm
But I
looking,
think
I said, literally said, I'm looking for you in particular.
yeah.
I
But I
mean,
think
how
that's interesting. I
uncanny is
think you
that?
put out the vibe. It's like a
Yeah,
frequency
yeah,
thing. It's like a musician thing.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
when you meet a couple of new guys and you say, "Well, can we vibe?" And it's a
yes, yeah,
nonverbal thing, right? It's like
yeah,
you can
yeah,
talk all you want, but it's like that guy plays bass, and when I play a chord, it works. Then it works, right? And it's like sometimes the things are like,
yeah,
it just
beautiful.
happens. Like, the universe put that guy in the room today, and this is the
Yep,
right guy, right? This is the right drummer
yep,
for this project. They show up, and it's like, and I was the last guy at at the audition, and that's the guy. You're getting ready to say, I'm done." And then the guy shows up right at the end. And, like, if
yeah,
you had left, you would have missed him. It's like
yep,
sometimes these things just happen. I'm a
yeah,
Buddhist. I feel like there's a lot of stuff that's, like, fated to happen, but it's like there's a plot.
yeah. I feel the same way. Feel the same way.
Yeah, I think it's super important because we're talking about storytelling. And I think if you're an entrepreneur, if you're just or even you're in your individual life and you're trying to make it, you have to be able to tell your story,
Yeah,
right? If you can't tell your story, you can't tell where you want it, where's the finale? Like, where's your objective? If you can't do that elevator pitch, if you can't speak for yourself, if you can't stop knocking yourself and say, "Well, I'm not good at this and I'm bad at that," well, where are you going to end up?
yeah, yeah. I think if everyone can think of themselves as the CEO of their own life, then this will apply really well because you are the CEO of your life, right? You're deciding who to hire, who to fire, who to promote in your life. Who do you keep close, who do you move away from? But for the CEOs that I coach, I tell them that your real job is to be the CSTO, the Chief Storytelling Officer of the company, because everyone wants a great story to live inside of. So for a CEO of a company, leader of a company, it's really critical. But for everyone, to your point, if you're someone who isn't running a company, but you are maybe actively looking for work or you're out looking for a partner in life, whatever that is, being able to tell a story is what allows for the resonance, to happen between people in these conversations. And many people I run into are like, I'm no good at storytelling. I hear this a lot, especially with my more technical founders. So usually the CEOs tend to be a little bit more relationally oriented, and sometimes the technical founders are a little bit more technically oriented and less proficient in conversational skills. So they think, I'm not a good storyteller. But that's never true, actually, because human beings only really speak in stories.
Yeah,
So like,
in their normal life with their family, they're telling stories.
all
with
the
their
time.
friends
That's
and telling
people.
stories.
Let's talk about this. Let's talk about this notion of identity for a second. This is super powerful if people can kind of let this in and consider this for a second. That what we consider as identity, who we really are, what it really boils down to is a set of stories that we've been telling ourselves repeatedly for long enough that they've become hardwired, physiologically, literally hardwired in our brain. And the way your brain works is when you create a new new idea, new skill, you create a new pathway for neurons to talk to each other, and it's fragile. It's just this fragile little link. But the more you use it and the more you use it, the more the brain realizes, you know what? I need this link. I need these neurons to fire well together. It starts to what's called myelinate those networks, which means it wraps them in fat, kind of like insulating a wire, so that it's a lot easier and takes less energy for the brain to send a signal from one neuron to the next to the next. So you tell yourself these stories over and over and over again, and then these ideas get myelinated in the brain, and then it just becomes like just the natural flow of thought energy that I am this and I'm not that. I'm funny, but I'm not smart. I'm smart, but I'm not a good storyteller. I'm this and I'm not that.
Mm-hmm.
100% of that is stories, which doesn't mean they're not true. And that's where people get caught up, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't mean it isn't valid. Because if you practice something long enough, it becomes so easy, so natural for you that it will feel experientially like it's the stuff you're made of.
Yeah.
But it's actually not the stuff you're made of. If I take someone who's, quote, creative and someone who thinks they're, quote, not creative, and I cut them open, I find the same shit inside. I find the same blood, the same bones, the same veins, the same organs. Now, I might see areas of their brain are a little bigger, a little smaller based on what they practice, but they have practiced repeatedly. If I cut open the brain of a taxi driver in London, taxi drivers in London are required to memorize the entire city map and get tested on it. And the city streets of London are not a grid anywhere.
Yeah.
They're all over the damn place, right?
Yeah.
So these taxi drivers study for years, and by the time they're done, if you look at their brains, and they have done this research, the area of their brain that is responsible for like our ability to locate ourselves in space, to navigate, and also memory is enlarged. But it's enlarged because they've used it and used it and used it. The same is true with musicians. So if you cut someone open, those are the differences you're going to see. But those aren't differences like they were born with a bigger part of their brain there. It happened because they did it over and over again. And stories are just like that. The story you tell yourself about who you are is just like the map of the city of London that's now in the head of that taxi driver. It's something that we've told ourselves over and over again. So the thing about identity is a story. I'm not a good storyteller. No, you just haven't actually discovered that the stuff coming out of your mouth all day long is all freaking stories. You think stories are this far off, weird thing that you don't know how to do. Meanwhile, you go home and you tell your husband or you tell your wife or you tell your partner, oh my God, my boss was such a jerk today and they stabbed me in the back. And you don't get that that's all stories. Yes. Unless there is a knife in your back when you get home that you can say, can you please pull this knife out of my back? They didn't stab you in the back, right? You just told a story about, now what they may have said a thing, they said something, they did something, but they didn't stab you in the back. So that's a story. We think, we talk, we speak in stories all the time. So to your point, right, of people needing to be a good storyteller, usually the first thing people need to get is, I'm already a masterful storyteller. I have been telling stories that are so convincing, even I believe them now.
Yeah. Well, I think that's you think about it, like, every athlete, they do all the repetitions, they do all their training, every musician, they've had all that rehearsal practice. And it's really like, I'm I work with programming, and, like you're talking about is like the kind of remapping. Like we talk about mapping things. Like we do structural changes, non-structural changes. We talk like then a structural change, we're changing all the tables. We add new tables. Non-structural changes is taking a column and changing the values in the column. Right? You can do that. Your brain, the computer is kind of trying to mimic a brain that's nowhere even near as capable. Right. But we have little pieces that like, oh, I can understand that I can understand that reprogramming. And you can do that by understanding that you are a storyteller, and not saying that you can't do something, that you're bad at something, that you're terrible at something, that you don't love yourself. You start to love yourself. You dive
Yeah.
into yourself,
Yeah.
and you're like, and it's not, some people have a hard time with they, oh, that's too, foo, like
Right.
it,
Right. Right.
you have to, like, if you're so negative and down on yourself, it's not foo. It's like you need to actually work on that.
Let me say something about that. This is such an important point to me. I want to double down. I want to like give my big hell yes to what you just said, but I want to try to ground it in a way that anyone could really let it in, because that's the challenge people have, is letting it in, especially the people who think it sounds woo woo, as you said. But think about this, because I find that neuroscience is like the tide that raises all ships, right? Like everyone gets now that the brain is like this very, very interesting organ that has these special abilities. So think of it this way. When you are born, if you are born to loving parents, which is the way, let's just say it was designed to be, when you're born without the ability to regulate your own nervous system, to calm yourself down, to excite yourself when you need to. You're born without any of that. So what happens? It's usually the mom, sometimes it's the dad, it's usually your mom. Your mom is constantly helping you do this by mirroring for you what she wants for you to have. So when you're upset, she'll go, oh, shh, 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 you're okay. You're okay. You're okay. Right? Or she'll be like, good morning. Good morning. Wake up. Good morning. Right? So she's helping you upregulate. She's helping you downregulate your nervous system when you're upset. She kisses the boo-boo. And what does all that do? What all that does is it reflects back to you externally. You're loved. You matter. I see you. You count. Right? You're important to me. And that starts to get wired in your brain. Now, some people have parents who don't do that.
Mhm.
Some people have parents who are not capable, for whatever reason, of doing that for you. And so that doesn't get wired into their brains. Either way, at some point in your life, every one of us has to learn how to provide that for ourselves. It gets provided by our parents when we're young because we don't have the machinery fully baked yet to be able to do it for ourselves. But when it's there, you grow into a much more stable, healthy, capable human being, balanced human being. So at some point in adulthood, we all have to learn how to do that for ourselves. The way I work with this in my own life and with my own clients is, especially for those who are parents, I feel like this is an easier access for people who are parents. Are you a
Mhm.
parent?
Yeah, I have a daughter.
Yeah. So I have a daughter as well. Mine's 28, almost 29 now. So what I do and what I have my clients do is imagine the very first time that you held that child, when you had the experience of just being completely overwhelmed by your love for that little pure innocent little being. For some people it's birth, for some people it's like the first time they saw them fast asleep, whatever it is, it's whatever it is. And you just imagine that experience you felt for that little being, that little being got to live inside of being with you. Then you take that emotion, because most people can remember that. Can you remember that with your daughter?
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
she's 25 now, but I remember I was very involved in her
Yeah.
upbringing.
So when you first met her and you had that experience, you get connected to that memory and you let those feelings flood your body, flood your mind. And then you just take them and you just turn them towards yourself, imagining yourself like a being, like that little being that you held when you had your daughter or your son or whoever, what it is for you. For some people who don't have children, it may be a special person in your life or even a pet, something where you can get connected to that feeling. And then you just get, I could really give that to myself, because that is what our neurology was designed to feed on. Like that is the original fuel
Yeah.
source. And if you can get good, I practice this every day because I don't wake up that way. I do not. I wake up in a just a morass of shit, just like, oh, I got to get this done. And oh my God, I should have done this better. And just all this stuff. I literally need to go through a process to bring myself back to that place where I can get present to what love actually feels like when I think about my daughter. And then I can give that to myself, no matter what I did or didn't do yesterday or what I'm going to do or not do today, so that my body, my brain can live in that environment as I go to work on what's important to me. And learning how to do that has been one of the most healing things I've ever accomplished in my life, just learning how to give that to myself. So for the people in your audience who are like, oh, this is too woo-woo, or this is all BS. No, this is really the way our brains were designed to optimally perform, is in the space of that kind of unconditional and uncompromising love that we experience from the day we're born. When we have loving parents, right? We get to live in that. And then there comes a time when you have to do that for yourself.
Yeah,
And if
you
you
have
do
to have
that, it's a game changer.
it's that empathy. Like, and the thing is, the empathy you have to have for yourself, right? Before you really
True.
can have empathy for other people, before you can love other people, you have to love yourself, and that becomes like a roadblock because, like, if you have that was a sociology major and a political science major, so we study
Cool.
like the microcosm and the macrocosm, and there's a little bit of psychology in it, but just like at the microcosm level, like if you don't have those loving parents, you don't build that pathway, you
Right.
don't build those that they
Yep.
then that the microcosm bleeds into the macrocosm, and the macrocosm bleeds into the
Yep.
microcosm. And so we've got a lot of dysfunctional folks from the microcosm that bleed into each other. And you get the societal problems. You get
Yep.
group behavior problems. They
Yep.
come from individual behavior problems. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it's all interrelated. And so when people think like one person's actions do affect other people's, right?
Yeah.
And so things that you say, words have meaning.
Yeah.
Words have meaning, your actions have meaning, your non-actions have meaning.
Yeah.
So that is like people like you can't the individualism sometimes throws people off in the West versus like Eastern philosophies, they're more communal.
Yeah. Yeah.
People
Yeah.
don't if you don't understand how what you do and what you say and what you think affects not just you, but I think other people around you.
Mm.
And when you're in some societies and indigenous societies, Eastern societies, different societies have a better understanding of that.
Yes.
So I
Yeah.
think people need to maybe that would seem like again might seem beyond your some folks understanding, and they want to be it's all STEM, it's all logic.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like no, it's like
Yeah.
sometimes you have to have a little bit of both, a little art and science.
Yeah.
Da Vinci, Da Vinci, remember it's art and science.
Yeah. You know, someone who had a profound understanding of this in our world was Martin Luther King.
Hmm.
He spoke about
Definitely.
this, and you could tell when he spoke about it that he wasn't like talking about a theory. It was real for him. He was literally asking himself, can I really be free if you are enslaved? So if my next door neighbor is enslaved, am I really free as I watch that?
Yeah.
If my wife or my husband or my mom or my dad or my sister, or my brother, right, if they are miserable, depressed, suicidal, it is almost impossible for me to be happy.
Yes.
Which doesn't mean someone else has to be happy so I can be happy. I'm just saying this is the way we're wired.
Yeah, we're wired.
And Martin Luther King talked about this. Can I really be rich if you're poor? Can I really be free if you're enslaved, right? And so this is actually a function of the way human beings are designed. This isn't like the right way to live. This is like the way trees live. And there's this really interesting study about this, by the way, that was done by a woman named Suzanne Simard, who was, I forget the name of the kind of doctor who studies trees, but that's what she did. And she published this study in the late 90s. They had this grove of trees that were Douglas firs and birch trees growing together in this grove. I can't remember which one is the understory tree. I think it was the birches or something. So they decided to see what would happen if they pulled out the understory trees, the birches, if the Douglas firs would get healthier because they'd have more nutrition, they'd have more, sunlight, whatever. They pulled out all the Douglas firs and all the birch trees got sick.
Yep. And codependent.
Couldn't figure out why. And then they realized that underground, there was this incredible network of fungi that connected the root systems of all of the trees in the area, and that they were communicating through this network. When one of the trees got injured, they would shunt resources its way to help it recover and things like this. And so that was actually biologically set up that they all sort of like hung together or they hung separately.
Yeah,
Human beings are the same, right? We're social species.
Social structure. Like there's a structure to plants that like make vegetarians like oh, like there's more sentience going on than you think.
Right.
But yeah, I saw that I watched a documentary about that fungal network and the root networks and how the chemical communication with these trees, sending
Yes.
chemical sense when the rain comes and
Right.
weather comes
It's
and
amazing, right?
yeah, there's a whole
And human
communication
beings are every bit as connected. But
as anybody.
what we do is that we, with our conscious mind, with our ability to just sort of like think with the prefrontal cortex, we can disconnect from the experience of being connected with each other. So we can have an experience that's consistent with believing that we're all on our own, because we can disconnect from what we
Yeah,
actually are
yeah,
feeling. If you actually get present, if you do the work to get present, you will notice that you walk into a room of people, you can read it instantly. And people talk about learn how to read the room. You don't need to
yeah.
learn how to read the room. You just need
You
to be
will.
freaking present.
You'll be of the room.
Just be present. You'd be like, oh, this room is tense. It'll hit you the second you walk in
Yeah,
there.
you
Or like,
know it.
oh wow, the space feels really warm or welcoming or whatever. You don't need to learn how to read the room. Like you said, you are the room, but we can disconnect from that in our experience, and
Yeah,
then we tell
I
ourselves
think
these
like
crazy stories.
we're kind of at the end, but I think what a lot of times is we're kind of taught to kind of fight for our own thing and not
Yeah.
understand that if you work with your fellow human being, there's a lot better outcome than
Yes.
if you fight, right? Fighting, might benefit certain people,
Right.
will benefit from the fight.
Yes.
But if you start to actually like love people around you or have that
Yeah.
understanding of
Yes.
the other, right? Of the less fortunate or of the the foreigner, the of the somebody that you don't or they practice something you don't understand. You
Right.
don't understand. So then you were we're kind of predisposed to filter something that I only like the things that I'm comfortable with that have always happened. If something doesn't it comes at me, my filter will say that's scary. I gotta stay safe. So I gotta naturally not like it. So we kind of get into this mode where we're just like, wolf at the door for everything.
Yes.
And we don't need to be doing that anymore. You
Yeah.
know, if it's
Yeah.
not a real threat, but I mean, if you think it's a threat, it's a perceived threat. So that made it's
Right.
kind of like, why do you feel everything's a threat versus an
Right.
opportunity? You know,
Yeah.
but I want to
Yeah.
let people know that we have your QR code up there. If people scan it, it'll go to andrewpoles.com/services. That will be a direct link to that. If people actually scan that, what do they find at your URL?
Yeah, so on that page of my website, you'll see all the things that I offer. There's also a link on there for some free resources, and there are ways to contact me if you navigate your way around the site. You can also contact me on LinkedIn. I check all my own LinkedIn messages at Andrew Pohl. Well, it's LinkedIn/in/Andrew Poles. So this is a real pleasure to just talk with you today. This is like jazz, right? We just like
Yeah,
someone
like the riff
sings
it.
a note and someone else riffs on that note, and someone else riffs on that note, right? It was great. So thanks for having me on.
Well, I love it, and, I'm glad that you came on today, and, again, that URL will be clickable. We've been live on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Kick. It's, clickable there. We'll be on all the other podcast channels you can listen to or watch by the end of the day tomorrow, and I wanna thank you for being here today. Thank you again.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.